All right. So, hello everyone. Welcome back to the channel. My name is Jorvik, and welcome to, I believe this is episode 4 of Fandom Friendly. As you can see, I am joined with two of my bestest friends in the world. I have Rafael, who is a co-founder of our previous production company, and of course we have Jon from Blackbird Productions. You can find him on YouTube. Link will be in the description. How are you doing today, gentlemen?
Beautiful. It's raining outside in Texas, so can't exactly complain about that.
Yes, you guys are in Texas. I'm in Colorado, so not too bad. It's nice and sunny today. It's gonna be like 70 degrees later. I'm excited.
No, I hope it stays like this for at least the next couple of days.
Yeah, I
Okay.
actually looked at the weather not too long ago, and it's like 60s to 70s for the next
Oh,
week or so.
it's that
Nice.
time. It's that time of year, and in Texas, man, that's huge. That's big.
Yeah,
You're gonna start
Dude,
seeing
late
wind.
last month, like sometime in August, they've been posting up signs about Halloween. Like, oh, 40 days until Halloween. It's like, dude, we're not even in the month yet. Just give it a break.
Yeah, that's how it is here. I mean, I feel like it gets every year. It's like after 4th of July, people are just like, it's Halloween. No, no, give me
Oh,
started. Now, look, I like Halloween. I'm not like a huge I'm naturally like a fall winter person. So like I love the aesthetic, but like I'm not a huge Halloween stan. You know what I mean? Does that make
I
sense?
like I like the costume aspect of it, but as an adult, unless you go into a party, that's not really worth it. And
No.
my son is too young to go trick or treating anyway.
Yeah, that's true. You still got a couple years at least. All right. So today we're going to be talking about the MCU. From the title, it'll be in there. We're going to be talking about Deadpool and Wolverine, what it does for the universe itself, and then talking about the state of the MCU, specifically Phase 4, Phase 5, and beyond. So initial thoughts. Let's go ahead and get into it. Oh, well, actually, I did see some news this week. I don't know if you guys follow a lot of like MCU news, but
No.
some set photos were leaked from the new Fantastic Four film of The Thing. Have you guys seen that?
No. Who's the cast for Fantastic Four anyway?
Do you not know the cast of Fantastic Four?
I don't watch that stuff. I'm pretty tapped out of Marvel at this point.
Okay, see, and that's why I have you on here, because I know we all have a lot to say about it. So the cast is Pedro Pascal as Mr. Fantastic.
Nice.
And at first, I was a little wary of that casting because I feel like has so much on his plate, especially this year. He had Last of Us season 2, which if you play the game, he probably didn't shoot a lot for that. Um, and then he has Gladiator coming out, I think, either this month or
Oh yeah.
maybe later this fall. But yeah, he's just in a lot of things, and at first I was just like Pedro Pascal. I mean, I mean, don't get me wrong, I love the guy. I think he's great. Um, but I don't know. I just have to see more of him. I don't know if you
I'm sure
guys,
you can handle it.
yeah, I don't know if you guys saw, but at the Comic Con that happened, oh gosh, that was what, late July.
Oh,
Uh,
Doctor Doom.
well, not that, but like they showed. We'll talk about that later. But they showed some footage from Fantastic Four that they had already shot. And from the consensus that, they showed him in character as Reed Richards, and it seems like a good fit. So I'm excited for that. We also have Vanessa Kirby as Sue Storm slash the Invisible Woman. I haven't seen a lot of her stuff. The thing that I've probably seen her in most recently, I think was it James Bond? I think it's James Bond. Hold on.
Did she
That's
play the wife?
I'm sorry.
Did she play the wife of Bond
Yeah,
or
yeah. I
the love
believe so.
interest?
I believe so. Yeah. And the latest one, what was the last one called? No,
Vector.
No Time to Die. That's what it was called.
Oh no. Oh,
Yeah.
that's right. They did make another one.
I think she was in that movie.
Supposedly the last one with Daniel Craig, but we'll see.
It seems like because like I've seen him in other movies now. Because like throughout the entire time of him playing Bond, you really only ever saw him as Bond. But I think this is the last one because like I just watched Lucky Logan,
Mm-hmm.
and he's in that, and I think he's also happy to be done with it because he's done playing the same kind of boring, stoic, depressed character. Because like the roles that he does now, he's a bit more out there, like with Knives Out series. He's a bit more. I don't know how you describe it. He's just a lot more active. It seems like
Yeah,
his acting style. He just kind of really experiments a lot more. And it's the same with Daniel Radcliffe from Harry Potter. Now that he's done with that, he plays a lot of weird, interesting, quirky roles. And I think they're actually having. It seems like they're having a lot of fun now.
yeah. I think a lot of it is. I mean, like look at like Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans. Like look at those guys as well. Like when you get locked into a certain character for a better part of a decade, and then you sprinkle in all these little other side projects. Like now we have, I mean, he's done it before, but now we have Chris Evans. He played a villain in Knives Out. Or in The Gray Man. They're exploring, and then like Chris Hemsworth. From being the seriousness of Thor, he started doing more comedic roles, and then of course that bled into Love and Thunder and Ragnarok. So I mean, it makes sense that as Daniel Craig, being such a serious actor for a decade, playing James Bond in what, like 5 movies I think there was of him. I mean, going and playing these sillier characters with Knives Out, with he has another movie that where he played like a crazy eccentric character, and I can't think of it off the top of my head. By the way, Vanessa Kirby was not in James Bond; she was in Mission Impossible. She was Ethan. Yeah, I think that's what I was
No,
getting
Ethan's
confused
love
of.
interest.
Yeah, she's also in Hobbs and Shaw. She played Shaw's sister.
That is
So
not
yeah,
a movie that I remember.
I know
It
that
wasn't
movie.
bad. It wasn't
It's for
terrible.
what it is. It's not bad. I agree. I
Yeah.
think it's just a fun action schlock movie that
I think it's what we talked about with Mortal Kombat. It doesn't have to be this
Right.
deep, engaging
Right.
film. It's just you pay money to relax and disconnect from reality and see some people get killed in unrealistic ways.
I mean, Idris Elba plays a literal superhero in that
Yeah,
movie, so it's not like, well, he's more of a
because
supervillain.
if I'm certain, isn't that movie a spinoff of Fast and Furious or something?
Yes, yeah. I think it came
Yeah.
out. I think it's a
Jesus.
spinoff of 8 or 7, one of the two. I can't remember where it comes in the timeline, but yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if they're making a second one.
Yeah. But anyways, continuing on with the cast of Fantastic Four, we have Joseph Quinn, who's been in a lot of things, but most notably his rise to fame was from Stranger Things season 4. He played I didn't watch that season, but he plays like the metalhead guy who
Oh, that guy.
the
Yeah.
long hair.
Oh,
Yeah, so he's playing Johnny Storm. And there was some photos. I'll put him in the edit, for people who haven't seen him. But there were some photos of him in costume, and because this film takes place in the retro, it takes place on another Earth, another
Of
timeline.
course it does.
I know it's that I sort of disagree with, but the way and the aesthetic that they're doing for this movie, I kind of am okay with it, because it's supposed to be this atom punk futuristic 1960s New York Earth that they're on. So I mean,
Okay,
visually it looks really
my
cool.
question. So my question is like, because it's on a different Earth, does that mean the last Fantastic Four that had Michael B. Jordan is that technically still part of the MCU technically now?
Yeah, I
Did
would
they
believe it
retcon
is,
or is it
because
just
we'll get into it when we get into Deadpool and Wolverine. But I think there's reason to believe that yes, those timelines do still exist within the greater MCU multiverse. And then finally, the Thing. Ben Grimm is being played by, oh god, I have to look up his name because I don't remember. It's like not a foreign name, but it's just off the top
It's
of my
not-
head.
It's not John Malkovich, is it?
No, it's Ebon. It's no.
Because it does show him as part of the cast in this movie.
Yeah, but we don't know who he's
definitely
playing.
not John Malkovich playing the fucking Thing?
No, it's Ebon Moss Backrack. I only know him. He's one of the main characters in The Bear on FX.
Yeah.
Great actor. I don't know if you've seen that show.
Is he
Raphael?
the brother? Is he the brother?
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah.
The older
You're
guy,
talking
yeah.
about. Yeah.
Great actor. I think he's great. We also have Ralph Ensign, he'll be playing Galactus. He has a very, very deep voice, deep British voice. I think it'll be really, really interesting. And then I don't know if they... I thought she was out of this movie, but there's Julia Gardner. She was... the only role I've really seen her in was in Ozark. But she's supposed to be playing Shala Ball, which is the wife of the Silver Surfer. So she's like the female Silver Surfer. And that was a big controversy when they casted her. But this is a different Earth. Who cares? It's not that serious. So anyways, so some new set photos came out. So anyways, back to the original point. New set photos came out of Fantastic Four it's a practical Thing suit. And everyone's like, oh, it looks dumb. But it's like, well, yeah, it's the Thing. But from the look of it, from the angle of it, I think it looks pretty good, honestly.
So the dude's in the actual costume this time.
Yes, I think it's like part animatronic suit. It's what it looks like.
Yeah.
And I'll send it to you guys later because I don't have it on me. Like, just send in like the group chat or whatever. But I think it does. I think it does look really good, personally. So speaking of multiverse, let's go ahead and get into Deadpool and Wolverine. So we won't. I mean, it's been out for over a month, so I guess spoilers are out the window. But let's just go around and just do initial thoughts. Right, starting with you, John. Go ahead.
I think the movie was pretty good. It's a nice, fun action summer flick, if that's what you're looking for. Mm-hmm. I'd say if you're a true Marvel fan, then you won't really get much out of progression in terms of
I
the
agree.
overall story of the MCU currently. In fact, I feel like this movie could even go so far as to be its own thing, which I'm pretty sure that's probably what they're going for. Something very neutral. But like, I guess there's some nuances, like for example with the TVA, where you have to you obviously have to watch the Loki series to understand what that is. But they still do a pretty good job in the movie explaining those nuances. But yeah, overall, I think it was a pretty fun movie, and I don't really have any complaints with it. There's a lot of comedy, which that's what Deadpool is known for. So definitely rated R movie.
Yes. And it's crazy that I still see people. Sorry to cut you off, but like, I see people trying to boycott that movie because they're like, "This is a Marvel movie, and I took my kids to see it." And it's like, well, that's your fault for not doing your research and knowing that this is
they
a
made
rated
two
R
of them.
movie.
They made two of them. You didn't learn at all. You didn't see the other two and think, "Oh, this one will be better. This one's going to be more tame."
Yeah, it's
the
crazy.
one thing I would have liked to saw was like somewhat of an end credit, just at least tying something of substance together with this movie.
Did you see that last week that they released a new end credit scene?
No,
Ryan Reynolds did. It is it's on YouTube. He released it was Gambit. Spoiler. It was Gambit and like how he survived that final battle between Cassandra Nova's compound, and how you see in his eyes that there is a mystic portal, the Doctor Strange portal, opening up behind him. So it's reason to believe that he was in fact saved after that. So that was something that was cut from the film. But the original end credit scene, which is just a funny gag about Chris Evans as Johnny Storm, talking smack about Cassandra, which honestly is crazy. What a crazy monologue to be given. But
especially something like Chris Evans, who's been playing like a Boy Scout of a superhero who doesn't like swearing. So it's just interesting. Like, he's the original Johnny Storm, but I mean, not many people who went to see that movie, I imagine, probably know about or seen the original Fantastic Four and seen Chris Evans in that light.
And I think too, it's that even when he was Johnny Storm in those original movies, those were still PG-13, so he still couldn't be foul mouthed like that.
He was more or less a smart ass in those films.
Yeah, and Johnny is for the most part in the comics. Yeah. That's why he pairs up with Spider-Man a lot, and like their dynamic in the comics is really great. So hopefully we get to see that in like.
I would definitely like to see Deadpool. I would definitely like to see Deadpool and Spider-Man.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, you can. There was that show Ultimate Spider-Man. There's an episode where Deadpool is in it. Obviously, he's not vulgar, but him and the Spider-Man
Nah,
dynamic, I
it's
think,
not the
still
same.
works in that show. Yeah, it's not the
It's
same.
not the same.
And plus, it's not Ryan Reynolds voicing him; it's a different person. It just feels off because you're so used to Ryan Reynolds now. I don't know if you've seen.
Ryan Reynolds is Ryan Reynolds is one of those actors, kind of like how Hugh Jackman is with Logan, where it's one of those very few
Yeah,
actors that
yeah,
encapsulate a character so well that it's
Yeah.
hard to imagine them playing as anybody else. Like, yeah, you could bring somebody if they wanted to, could make another Wolverine movie if they wanted to, but if you recast Hugh Jackman, it's just gonna feel weird. And I
yeah.
get it, he's just an actor, but he is that person.
And I
It's the
think
same with Robert Downey Jr. Like when he goes to like children's hospitals and everything, people see his face and it's immediate. Tony Stark, you are
right.
Tony Stark
And
because you just dedicate your life to that actor so well.
yeah, and we'll get to that later when we talk about the Doctor Doom casting and what that means as well.
Mm,
Uh, but yeah, I mean, it's just that they're in this movie like altogether. Like you're right, John. Like it's just if you're just an MCU stan, a fan, even a casual fan, this doesn't do a lot for the universe. The only thing it really does is bring Deadpool. It gives Deadpool a way to be in the main sacred timeline. But if you're a fan of the legacy Fox Marvel films, I think this is a great kind of send off to that universe, and we kind of saw that in the end credit while the credits were rolling, where all like the behind the scene footage of all of the movies, Fantastic Four, all the X-Men movies, even the Fantastic Four 2015 film. So you have like those images, and you're just like, wow, I kind of like I grew up with these movies, like. And I also wish that they would have. I wish they were able to bring back Nicolas Cage as Ghost Rider. I think that would have been very interesting. I think he was asked, but
I don't believe he was
declined.
asked because he doesn't seem like the type of person to turn down a role like that or turn down really any role.
Yeah, especially if it's
Yeah.
like a send off to if his character that he played, right? Because I mean,
Because
look at
you see the very few interviews that he does, like the Wired episodes where he's answering the questions, and he gives off that image of that perception of an actor who really enjoys his craft and is invested
yeah.
in his character. So I feel like something like that as a send off or like that homage, I feel like that's something that it seems like he'd be the type of person to gravitate towards.
Would the movie be better if they had him in it? You think like that whole middle section where he meets Elektra, Gambit,
Yeah.
Blade? Blade was a
Yeah, I
huge
mean,
thing.
it would
Yeah.
have completed the picture.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
because like I remember whenever I sat there watching the movie, and the people were walking out, and they wasn't thinking anything of it, and then you see Blade, like me and other people in the theater, like,
Dude,
no way. Electra
that whole
comes out, no way.
that
Channing
whole
Tatum comes out, it's like no freaking way.
yeah, and the Tatum wow, the Channing Tatum aspect of it is very interesting to me because if you don't follow like movie news, that joke, that his whole like character wouldn't make sense. You know what I mean? Like I think most
Mm.
people just don't know that he's been trying to get a Gambit movie off the ground for like 15 years, and it just never worked out. And then when Disney bought Fox, it just went away. So like if you didn't like know that, I think that kind of joke gets left apart because he makes a joke where he goes, "Maybe I was born here in the void. I don't know." And like, oh, like or people wanted to save our universe, and then he's like, or the people who never got a chance to, like it's like that meta joke of like, yeah, this character exists, but it doesn't actually exist in our world. So that's something else that I also really appreciate. as
See,
well.
though, that's one of the things that I did enjoy about Deadpool and Wolverine as a whole. So, like I just said, like I don't think it really has it doesn't push the plan for Marvel forward in his act in a manner, and I
Mhm.
don't think it's supposed to. I think it's that perfect middle ground where it kind of talks about the mistakes that they may have done in the past, like that little notion where they had the Fox when they see the Fox sign, the Fox
Yeah.
Studios in the void, or they talk about the multiverse and poking fun at that. I think they're acknowledging that yeah, maybe that wasn't the best thing, or maybe we milked it too much. And so I like that they bring out explore all those aspects. I think it's for the time that it's supposed to be in, and it's not exactly supposed to be moving forward in a way. I think it's grounded where it needs to be, but it
Yeah,
can
because
still set up for future projects.
right, because in a
Yeah.
way, it is just a send off to the Fox legacy films, right? Because they mentioned that Punisher was on that team, and people have been trying to figure out which Punisher because there's been like 4. And I think the general consensus is that it's Ray Stevenson's
The original
version.
one, right?
I don't know if he's the original one. I think he's the one from like 04, 05.
Yeah,
whenever
yeah.
that
With
was.
they had what's his name as the villain,
Um,
John Travolta.
yeah, was he the villain in that?
Yeah, he was the main villain. It was John Travolta.
Was he Scarface or whatever? His
I don't.
Jigsaw's his name.
No,
I don't
it wasn't
remember that
Jigsaw.
movie.
It was the mob. It was like that mob. It was like the mob family or whatever.
It's been a while since I've seen that movie, but obviously
It's
they
good.
could have gotten Ray Stevenson back, but tragically he died last year because he was in the Ahsoka
Oh,
show. He played
seriously?
Baylan Skoll in the Ahsoka show, and he died early last year before that show came out. And I think 100%. I think if he was still alive, he definitely would have come back as Punisher if they would have asked him to. He was also Volstagg in Thor, one of the Warriors 3. That's him as well. Yeah, it's just sad because he's such a great actor, and they're still going to do Ahsoka season 2. But his character, they're just going to have to recast his character because his character was very important, and it's unfortunate. Anyways, they also mentioned Quicksilver was a part of that team as well. Don't know which version of Quicksilver. It could be the Evan Peters version from the X-Men films. I doubt it's Aaron Taylor Johnson version.
No.
And then they also mentioned Daredevil, which I think we all agree is probably the Ben Affleck version of Daredevil.
Which would
Yeah.
be humorous.
Yeah, and
I would definitely like to see that.
they did make that joke that he goes because Elektra, Jennifer Gardner, she was in the Daredevil movie, and she also had her own spin-off movie, which was awful. Deadpool makes that joke. He goes, "Oh, I'm so sorry." She goes, "Nah, it's okay." Because they were married in real life.
Yeah.
And it's just one of those jokes. Like, if you just don't know, like it'll go over your head. But I thought that was really funny as well.
I think another point with Deadpool Wolverine, what they did is they kind of like how you kind of briefly talked about how they kind of pay a homage to the legacy Marvel. Because let's be honest, until I would say Iron Man with Robert Downey Jr., that's when I would say the MCU officially began.
Yeah.
But you had all these other Marvel films prior, and they kind of, in a way, paved the way. They kind of set the foundation for the MCU and everything. So it's like, but now, ever since Avengers and everything, most people don't think about that or think like, oh yeah, Daredevil, or not necessarily Daredevil, but Wesley Snipes. I can't think of his name right now. He was a Marvel character. Blade,
Right.
he was a Marvel character. Or
in a way,
Ryan Reynolds wanting to do Deadpool for so long before the MCU and everything. Because you have him in X-Men Origins, but we don't talk about that Deadpool because of what they did to him. We don't talk about it, but we know. So it's nice to see everything come together.
Yeah, and like especially with like Blade, because like I think Blade is the legacy Marvel character, and I say that because if you guys, I don't know if you guys know, or care to know, but in the 90s Marvel was nearly bankrupt, and so that's why they sold a lot of their IPs out to all these studios. So that's why you have Sony, where they have the rights to Spider-Man and adjacent characters. New Line Cinema had Blade, I believe, and a couple of other characters, maybe Punisher as well. Universal had Hulk, and Fox got the X-Men and Fantastic Four, etc. So that's where that kind of divide happened. And Blade, what was that, like 98, 99, something like that? When Blade came out, Blade truly was
like 99 or 2000, or it was turning century.
I think the third one was like 04, I want to say, maybe 03, 04. But the first one, he technically now, I think it's 99, because they make a point that Hugh Jackman is now like lost the record for continuous character because Blade came back, or Wesley Snipes came back as Blade. Now he is the oldest.
Oh, that's right. And X-Men came out in 2000.
Yeah, X-Men came out in 2000, which is Crazy to think about. So I think overall, like, the movie does do a lot of service to the legacy of the Fox Marvel characters. Now, if only Sony can get their shit together and make it actually good Marvel or Spider-Man film without the help of Disney Marvel, I think we'd be golden. But honestly, I think we've talked about this before, but I truly believe that Sony needs to have their rights taken away because with Morbius, Madam Web, I mean, I would even say Venom 2, like, they're just not good films. And like Craven comes out later this year. I did a reaction to the trailer a few weeks ago. It's just, I mean, it looks different enough for it to be.
It looks cool, but it's not going to be good.
Yeah, I just
it's
don't
not.
think
It's not going to be a
good.
box office hit because I feel like a lot of
No.
people don't really know who Craven is, and the trailers don't really help either.
See, that's the thing, because like I'm sure Craven is a big character in like the comics or whatever, but but I imagine some of the other Marvel characters that he probably surrounds himself around. I don't know if it's one of those, and we like that's something I want to get into. Is like, is he one of those characters that needs to have a movie dedicated all to
No.
himself? Is he
No.
really that important of a as a Marvel character, or even in the comics, was he really that popular enough?
I mean,
to
I
get
think
his
he
own-
had a few solo runs in the comics, but what makes Craven and like Madam Web and like Venom and Morbius and like all these other villains that he has, what makes them great villains is their relationship with Spider-Man and Peter, right? And it's like Doc Ock. Like, if they did a Doc Ock movie without Peter Parker in it, like, it just wouldn't make sense because Doc Ock is so tied to Peter as an identity. You know, he was his mentor, and then he became, like, he figured out that Peter was Spider-Man. He even took over his brain at one point, his mind, and controlled his body. He became the superior Spider-Man in the comics. I mean, like, there's so much relationship there. And Venom, of course, Venom too. Venom
And I
is
think that's
literally
yeah.
bred from Spider-Man. And when you have, like, don't get me wrong, I do like
Tom
who's
Hardy.
Tom Hardy. Thank you. I really like Tom Hardy's Eddie version of Eddie Brock, but like, I just don't like those movies. Like, I like the
And like
first
he does
one.
the best he can. But
Yeah,
as
like,
you
he
said,
does the best he can with what he has.
these characters are good because of how they interact with the main character. Because like you said, most of them
Right.
probably didn't have their own origin story until after they were introduced with the main characters, such as
Mm-hmm.
Spider-Man. You have a couple comics with Spider-Man fighting this big bad, and then maybe they'll write a comic based off of that one villain. But it's like, if you're not going to have them interact, like, I don't want to see the setup. Like, you got to make sure, like, because like you have this whole setup, and then you have the fight. It just seems kind of backwards. And it's like, how are you going to make it fit in?
Yeah.
Rather than, it'd be better to just have a movie surrounded where Spider-Man's doing his thing, and then he fights his villain. And then maybe if it's received well and you get good ratings on that character, okay, maybe we could explore his backstory a little more. But I don't want to have a backstory on a character that I don't really care about, because like I said, I don't read the comics, so I don't know that he fights Spider-Man. I don't know what his relationship is to Spider-Man. It's just a superhero, or I guess he's a villain now. We don't know. And I imagine most of the people watching these films, I imagine there's a small niche of people that are really dedicated and know the comic book lore to really care.
Yeah, it's just crazy to me because, like, they also mentioned that they wanted to do an El Muerto movie, which is like a D-list Spider-Man villain. He's like some luchador guy, and they're going to get Bad Bunny to play him. And it's what the hell are these people think? Like, who's running Sony? Because, like, and I also should mention that obviously the animated Across the Spider-Verse and Beyond the Spider, whatever it's called, the Spider-Verse movies, really good. But that Sony animation, that's a separate division than like Sony Pictures technically.
Or like the Spider-Verse.
Yeah, the Spider-Verse movies, which are, I think, the
fantastic.
best Spider-Man films out of all of them. But so I should mention that obviously Sony can create good Spider-Man films, but that's a completely different creative team. I don't know who. I think it's Amy Pascal. I think is still head of Sony, but
So I have a question for you, and it might not be related to Sony, but like, we talked about how like some of these characters probably don't need their own movie. I know we like off topic we had talked about like my opinions on Black Widow. I don't think she's that vital or that important to have her own
Mm-hmm.
fleshed out film. I think she just works better as
Like
a
an
secondary,
ensemble.
part of the
Yeah.
ensemble. Once again, not every character needs its own film. But my question is like with the Hulk series, why is that all the Hulk movies have like standalone Hulk films have not been received as well as it could? Is like because Hulk seems like a fairly interesting character, but is he
Mm-hmm.
that interesting enough to warrant his own story, or do we not really care to see him
So
and just have us? Because like look at Batman. And I know it's a little off topic, but think about Batman. I think we're finally coming to the point now with some of these Batman films where we don't need to go into Batman's origin story. We just
yeah,
jump right
I
into
agree.
Bruce Wayne and adventures because everybody knows, even if you don't watch Batman, you know how he became Batman. You know what happened to his parents. So
Yeah,
we
it's the
don't
same thing
need,
with
and same thing
Spider-Man's
with
as
Bruce
well.
Banner. We know what happened, but is he that popular of a character to have his own film, or does he work better as an ensemble?
So the thing with the Hulk is because he's technically had, besides like his TV show he had in like the 70s with Lou Ferrigno as the Hulk.
Yeah, we're not going to
Um,
talk about that.
he's technically only had two solo movies, right? That was 2013
Hmm.
Ang Lee Hulk, which I grew up on. I mean, I was like 8 when that movie came out. I love that movie. You know, the comic book style paneling. Now watching it, it makes me nauseous because of how
Oh, it's so cringe.
the quick shots of it and all. But and that was with Eric Bana as Bruce Banner. And then you
Then
had
you
the
had the Edward Norton.
yeah, you had the Incredible Hulk in 2000. Was that also 2008, 2009?
Around that time.
It's technically the second movie of the MCU, right?
Hmm.
So I think with the Hulk is like I think he can have a solo movie, but the problem is that in the comics, the Hulk's best stories are the ensemble stories. So like Planet Hulk, for example,
Hmm.
where the Illuminati, which was introduced in Doctor Strange 2, but it's a different version of the Illuminati. But because Hulk is so, you know, uncontrollable, they send him off into space and he gets stuck on Stakar. No, I think it's a different planet in the comics. But then he becomes the Gladiator, right? And then like that's a good Hulk solo movie. However, they did adapt that a little bit in Thor Ragnarok, where after Age of Ultron, he left Earth and then he somehow got sucked into the Devil's Anus, as they call it, uh, and landed on Sakaar and then became a gladiator. So they did adapt that story a little bit. The next big Hulk thing was World War Hulk, which is where after Planet Hulk, he returns to Earth with like all his kids, and like there's like this big there's like multiple Hulks running around, and he basically like decimates the Earth. And so like that's something I would consider an ensemble film because the world's heroes are trying to fight him and stuff like that.
But what about the one that's coming out recently where it's going to have She-Hulk, Hulk's son, I guess, that you see in She-Hulk? I didn't watch it. And then
Yeah,
they got what?
you should. She-Hulk is actually people.
No, no,
Well,
no.
we'll talk about it later, but yeah,
That ain't happening. That ain't happening.
I do agree.
But like
I think his
they have.
son was forced into that show. I will agree with that.
I mean
But
that's the least of the reasons why I want to watch it. But either way, you have the
look,
Hulk son. You have what's his name? Han Solo. What's his name? He's supposed to be playing Red Hulk or something. And
oh,
then they got
Harrison
It's
Ford.
Harrison Ford.
yeah,
Yeah,
Harrison Ford, and then you have that dude from Edward Norton's Hulk who played I think Abomination.
yeah,
Apparently he's back.
yeah. He's back. He came back in She-Hulk. Emil Blonsky. And you also have Tim Blake Nelson's character from the Incredible Hulk,
Yeah.
the leader, coming back as well in Captain America 4. And we'll talk more about that when we get to the future of Marvel later on in the episode. But yeah, I mean, I don't think they're building towards a World War Hulk because it would have to be. I mean, it's literally like universe ending. Like it's one of those like events that it's like the Age of Ultron, right? Like you can't do Age of Ultron without literally ending the world because that's the whole point of the Age of Ultron. And so in Ultron's also coming back in the new Vision series, which I'm down for. But but I think what was your original question? I'm sorry, we've talked so much about him.
Don't you have it written down?
No, I didn't write down what you just asked. Something about
Hulk.
Hulk.
Like overall, is Hulk, is he a good enough character to have his own film? Because it seems the last couple ones, they haven't been that well, or they haven't performed as well as others could have. So like, is it worth making a solid Hulk film?
I think now it's too late, personally. But there was something called there was a cartoon called Agents of Smash, where they had Hulk, where he led his own team of Hulks. There was Amadeus Cho, who was the totally awesome Hulk. We actually met his mother in Age of Ultron. There is A-Bomb, who was like this blue looking Hulk, and I forget what his real name is. And then of course there's Red Hulk, who's also on that team. So I mean, they could do like an ensemble Hulk cast, but I just think it's too late. Personally, it's like the Black Widow thing, right? Like, I do like the Black Widow film. I mean, it's not a 10 out of 10 for me, and it's pretty low on my ranking list, but
you're also biased, though. You like every Marvel film ever.
That's not true.
That is very true. John,
yes,
would you say that's true?
I do like. Yep. I do generally like most of the movies, but like, I can acknowledge where the faults are.
Because you just told me to go watch She-Hulk.
Yeah, but because She-Hulk is probably I would say it's probably the most comic accurate show that they have, because She-Hulk is chaos walking in the comics, and because she also breaks the fourth wall in the comics as well, and so I mean, like, I think as an isolated show, yeah, dude, there's a panel in the comics from like the 70s where she's jump roping like naked, and it's like, why didn't they put that in the show?
Those are two completely different things. Why didn't they put that in the show?
One of my favorite panels is where because she's also like a horn dog in the comics as well, and which good for her. And there's a panel, I can't remember what it's from, but she's sleeping with Tony Stark, and Tony's like, so you like want to stay for like breakfast? And she's like, no, I gotta go. And she, when she like leaves Tony as like a one night
Playboy
stand.
gets played.
Yeah, and I think it's really funny. So, but anyways, we digress. But like with Black Widow, I think the Black Widow movie also came too late. And I think if that would have came out during the Infinity Saga, I think her death in Endgame would have been more impactful, because I think her death already in Endgame was impactful, but then because of COVID it got pushed, but like the next year you have a Black Widow film, and it's like, what? It's
kind of out of place.
Yeah, it feels very out of place, even though that film takes place and chronologically takes place after Civil War, like between Civil War and Infinity War.
But then it should have been taken. Then it should have been filmed and released after Civil War. Yeah, that's just weird that you're making prequels to things that, okay, it's like, spoiler alert, we already know what's going to happen. So it's one of those, like, anything that she does in that film is completely meaningless because, well, it doesn't matter because she dies regardless.
Right.
So so it's like, why do I care?
And again, it's one of those things that, I think the whole purpose of the movie was to introduce Red Guardian, introduce Taskmaster, introduce the second Black Widow, Yelena, who I love. I love Florence Pugh as that character, and I'm so excited she's coming back. But in the Thunderbolts, but it's just like, it does feel out of place. So like, I think Black Widow, did deserve a solo movie. And like, the thing that how like she got a movie but Hawkeye got a series, I think is weird. But I think the Hawkeye series works best as a series than I think a movie would have been. And I think that segues to our next talking point, which is the state of the MCU, and like how they decide, what's a show, what's a special presentation, what's a film, that type of thing. let me pull up the list of projects because I don't know all of them off the top of my head, which is
I'll be
surprising.
honest. Like, granted, I'm not the biggest Marvel fan. I can still enjoy the Marvel series. You know, when the first Iron Man and then like Captain America and everything came out, they were good. And then when you saw that, okay, they're actually starting to tie everything in. I feel like that was a big first for like a film company to do, to have all these different essentially crossovers. Because I remember seeing those in my no cartoons with Jimmy Neutron and Fairly Odd Parents and having those crossovers. It's always nice. It's like, okay, something that they do in this is gonna come into play later. But as they start building up the Avengers, and then you eventually have the Avengers, it was great. Then they add on more. They start adding in more characters. The pacing I felt was very well done. They end up building up to Infinity War, and that was amazing for a number of reasons. One, you have all these various movies tie in. Everything that they do in one movie is going to have an effect. It's going to come into play in the subsequent movie after that, and you have this ensemble, this massive ensemble of all these A-list actors and actresses and everything, and it was fantastic. And then they end it with the Infinity War, and I feel like that was a shift. Like post Infinity War, I haven't really been enjoying some of the stuff that's been coming out. Loki season 2 is an exception. That was very well done. The show overall is just really
Yeah.
interesting and exploring a completely different part. And it seems most of Loki doesn't really have much to do with the overall MCU and all the other characters that we already know in the MCU. I would say it's fairly self-contained.
Yeah, but
Other
it's
than that, the
also
other series and movies that have been coming out, like even Doctor Strange, the second Doctor Strange, was rather disappointing.
yeah, considering what the title was. Yeah, yeah.
The
But
title, the title, it felt a bit rushed, and also like it's Disney's budget. They're making their budgets are multi-millions, and the CGI was really terrible,
well, yeah,
and I feel
because
like they should have done better. They could do
I
better than that.
and I think that point also segues to the big issue with Phase 4, mostly, not really. I mean, I guess also Phase 5 for the most part, but mostly Phase 4, and is that it's quantity over quality, right?
Yes,
And
they keep cranking them out. There's always a
I
show.
have
There's like 5 movies a year, or probably more. And it's one of those you can't even sit down and absorb what you just watched. Because you watch a movie, you take some time to process it and think about what's coming next. Oh, you already know what's coming next. This one, and then you
yeah,
got this one. And the original from Iron Man to Infinity War, it was very easy to follow. They didn't really make that many movies to tie in to make the Infinity War films, so it was easy to follow. But now, let's say the next big Avengers film, dude, they made so many movies and TV shows that I'm out of the loop in certain things, or maybe I
just
actually do want to see this film, but then there's so much stuff that's going over my head because I didn't watch these films, that now that's where it's getting annoying, because now it's one of those, you have to almost watch these films and these TV shows to follow what's going on.
yeah, because I
Where
have here that there are 19 projects in just Phase 4 alone.
over the course of how many years?
21 to 22. And it ends with so it starts with WandaVision, which I really enjoyed, actually.
Yes,
I really
that
love
was also
WandaVision.
pretty enjoyable.
And then it ends with the Guardians holiday special in December of 22. You saw that?
I did see that.
Yeah,
I thought it was
Yeah.
fine. I mean, as like a little holiday special,
it's
little
it's
throwaway thing.
Guardians.
Yeah, it's fine. Now does that is now obviously rewatching all of these, like I've been going through the process of rewatching all these films because I've been doing a ranking video or ranking videos on all the phases, and I'm about to do Phase 4, which is going to be my most controversial video yet. But I think as a whole, I do think there, and again, this is going to be I wish I was getting paid to say this, but I do think there is a lot of good in these shows, but obviously there is a lot of bad. And I think the bad comes from the quantity, right? Because like you said, like if COVID didn't happen, because COVID pushed a lot of these projects back. COVID pushed, Black Widow was supposed to come out in 2020. So was WandaVision and like all of those first few projects of Phase 4. COVID really did push a lot of that back. I mean, it wasn't just Disney. Like, all the studios felt it as well. Like, you can look at DC. Like, the quality of DC films really tanked as well because of that. I mean, look at Wonder Woman 1984. I think that's worse than anything in Phase 4, personally. But it's just, I'm looking at the list. Because we had WandaVision, we had Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Loki Season 1, and that was just in 20, and then Black Widow, and What If Season 1, Shang-Chi, which I thought was great, Eternals, Hawkeye, and Spider-Man No Way Home. That was all in 2021. Right there. Was that 9 projects in 2021 alone? And so, and when you have, like, you know, we're all filmmakers, you know, we kind of know, I mean, we don't work in special effects or anything, but, you know, we all know that special effects take time, you know, and when you have 9 projects in a year, you know, coming out. Now, to be fair, not all of those projects are very special effects heavy, you know, but, you know, when you have 9 projects a year, you have multiple studios working on visual effects, that gets strenuous. So what do you guys think about the whole, because, like, I do think, I know a lot of people hate the Eternals. I love the Eternals, and I think, and we can talk about that later, but I have seen a lot of people now realize that, hey, Eternals is actually a pretty good movie as, like, its own thing, but I think the visual effects in Eternals are immaculate. I mean, have you guys really seen that movie, first of all? And two,
I haven't seen it all the way through.
Do you remember the visual effect? I encourage you to go and just watch some of the fighting scenes and just see some of the visual effects, because I think that movie was also supposed to come out in 2020, but they delayed it a year, so they really spent time on the visual effects. I think that has the best visual effects out of all of Phase 4, personally.
That's the one with the woman speedster, right?
Yes, Makari.
Yes. So I remember. I only remember seeing, like, the end where they're, like, at that beach area, kind of area, and they're all just going at it. I do remember that.
Is emerging from the ocean. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I remember it was pretty good.
Noah, our other buddy Noah, and I'll probably have him on like another video game episode, because he's a big video game guy. He hates that movie. He absolutely abhors Eternals, like it, which is crazy to me.
I don't blame him. I mean, so the main thing, I imagine, it probably has to do with the thing with Marvel is, even though you were exploring these various different characters and everything, and different storylines, they're very formulaic as far as how the characters act, the comic relief, and it's one of those. It's extremely repetitive. It's a different movie, but I already kind of know what's going to happen. It's one of those, I feel like I've seen this movie already. If that makes sense. It's like, I feel like I've seen this already. I already know what's kind of happening, what's going to happen, the pacing of everything. And it's one of those, like, they're not really changing it up. It's extreme. It follows this very predictable formula. And that gets exhausting. There can be some moments where it doesn't have to be all jokes and fun. Why is there always got to be a gag or some joking or thing like that? I don't mind it here and there, but it's all the time. I can give a little more like grace for like Guardians of the Galaxy, because the whole conception of it and everything is just kind of silly. It's a motley crew of all these different people. So there might be I can see more likely of having some comedic relief and everything with all these very different people clashing together, but they're also kind of a family. I don't know. It fits better versus, like, I mean, in the Avengers or other things where, in, like, cheesy one-liners and stuff like that, that it's just getting played out, in my opinion, and that's one of the things that it's kind of exhausting me from wanting to watch some of these movies and TV shows.
And I think too also is that with some of these, like, especially we're so far into, I mean, we're 15 years into the MCU, right? And so, well, actually, I think 16 now, but having an origin film this far in does feel exhausting. I do agree with you. But I think with the Eternals specifically, I mean, that's 10 characters. 10, like, as the whole team. I think if they would have focused on, like, 5 of those in that movie, and then if it got a sequel, focus on finding the other 5, I think it would have been a little bit better. But because there was just so much packed into that film, which one, it was a long movie as well. It was like 2 hours and like 50 minutes. I mean, it's a long movie, and I think that's why a lot of people were just like, you know.
And so like, you also kind of said it too. So you got to think there's what 10, you said like 10
Yes,
so on
10,
people
10
in
of
this
them.
film.
Yeah.
It's different when you look at okay, if you were to watch Avengers or the new or the like Endgame or any of that stuff, you got way more many characters
Yeah,
as
it's like,
far as
I think it's
main
like
characters.
63.
But
I
you got to
think is
think
in
though,
Endgame.
it's within like 10 years they've all had their origin stories. And so when you watch that movie, there's kind of an understanding that you should probably watch the other films, but like Infinity War, there were some of the Marvel films that I had not seen. But also, I didn't really need to see it because I saw the important ones. I've seen Thor 1, I've seen Doctor Strange 1, Captain America, I've seen the Iron Mans and stuff like that. So it's like I already have an idea. I might miss a couple little nods here, but overall, it's not that important.
Yeah.
But I see this whole ensemble of characters. I already kind of know the backstory, but because they've made these movies over the past several years. But when you got a movie like Eternals, where you got 10 main character people, how am I so there's not enough time to fit all their backstories in and enough for me to actually want to care about any of these characters because you don't have enough time to flesh out every single character that they have and also have the villain and all these fight scenes to make me want to be invested or care enough.
Yeah, no, I agree. And you could also add an 11th character because there was Dane Whitman, the Black Knight, was also in that. He was a supporting character in that.
Which I feel like they did him dirty, honestly, because it's like, I don't know, they kind of waited until like the very end to just say something about that when they were just basically edging us throughout the entire film.
Yeah, because he doesn't have any of his powers, and he doesn't get his sword until the end. It was an end credit scene, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and it's stuff like that. Like, I hope they bring him back because he's a very interesting character and like the lineage of the Black Knight and stuff like that. Because there's multiple Black Knights, but it's it's one of those things where like because also that's technically the first appearance of Blade as well as a voice. Mahershala Ali's version of Blade, which also has been in development hell the last 5 years.
Yeah.
Which is a shame too, because it's like Blade is another character that he's a very popular character. You know, he's already had 3 movies in the.
But here's the thing, also now that I want to know because I think when they first announced the new Blade, we've already seen that Wesley Snipes has been reprising the role. And it seems that, one, he still looks pretty good. He can still do the action movies. My thing is, why make a new Blade? Why have to make a new
because
Blade?
Wesley
Why can't
Snipes
we have
is like
this Blade?
65 years old.
So?
I mean,
he still looks pretty good.
Mahershala Ali is like in his 40s as well, but it's like you want to have a fresh, young. I mean, especially if this character is going to continue to show up.
Dude, the original Blade wasn't even fresh young. He was already a middle-aged man. So, I mean, what difference does it make? And let's be honest, from the first Blade to this now Blade, Wesley Snipes is one of those black don't really crack. Even all those years in prison for tax evasion, the man still looks pretty good. Allegedly, sure. But the man still looks pretty good, does he not? Even in Wolverine, he's still able to kick some ass, regardless of there might be some stunt doubles. He can still essentially portray the character. He can still do the character justice, and he seems to enjoy playing the character. Nothing against Mahershala Ali, but I mean, do we really need another recasting of Blade?
Yes. And
why?
Because Blade. Okay, so it's like Wolverine, right? Like you can argue that Wesley Snipes is Blade, that he is one of those actors, just like RDJ is Iron Man, Hugh Jackman is Wolverine, Ryan Reynolds is Deadpool, etc. It's just when you want to continue these characters and these stories, like there's a lot of Blade stories that hasn't been told yet on screen, right? And when you have just an older actor, not to be ageist or anything, it's just that having the younger character, having a younger actor, you can who can carry that character another 10, 15 years. It's just like Spider-Man, right? You don't want to, like, everyone's like, oh, bring back Tobey Maguire. But it's like, no, like, bring him back occasionally. I think he'll come back. Him and Andrew Garfield will probably come back in Secret Wars. Like, I feel like that's a no-brainer. I think we can all agree on that. But it's like, I don't want to see another Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie because he did his time, and I like those movies for the most part. Like, those movies still exist. You can go watch those, right? And so it's the same thing with Wolverine. Like, they kind of teased it in Deadpool and Wolverine. Henry Cavill maybe being a replacement for Wolverine, right?
I don't know.
No,
But I agree with you. I think he looked cool. Yeah, I think it's the same principle as casting John Krasinski as Mr. Fantastic in Doctor Strange 2, because that was a big fan cast for a long time. And it's like, cool, he exists. Like, there is a Henry Cavill Wolverine.
You did the fan service.
Yeah, you did the fan service. Let's move on. But I think, Mahershala is another one of those actors like Ryan Reynolds. He loves Blade. He wants to play this character. He's partially producing this film or this new take on this character. So I think, like Gambit and like all that, I think he deserves his shot at Blade at least once, And if that leads into a Midnight Suns movie where we get Moon Knight back, we get Ghost Rider finally.
Yes, I would have liked to see Moon Knight again.
We get Dane Whitman, Black Knight, we get all of these kind of dark supernatural based heroes, or anti-heroes, whatever you want to call them. Punisher could be a part of that team. We're getting that. We're gonna eventually get that, and I hope Mahershala at least gets a chance to play Blade at least once. You know what I mean? That's just me personally. That's just my opinion. But look at who is it? Oh my gosh, I'm blanking on what was just in my mind. Like, I do hope some of the Eternals return. Because I know that.
Well, what's the end game? What's the? So they just brought out the Eternals. What's the end game with Eternals? What is or what was their plan with that?
So the Eternals are.
I guess this goes into the future of the MCU.
Well, I think because like Thanos technically is an Eternal. Technically, his brother shows up in the Eternals film. Eros, who's played by he's Star Fox, who's played by what is his name? Harry Styles. But he only showed up.
His brother.
Yeah, that's Thanos' brother. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. So in the comics, Thanos is what's known as a deviant.
Yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Yeah. So in the deviants show up in the Eternals movies, they're like those weird, like animalistic creatures that the Eternals fight. But in the comics, they're just deformed people, I guess. So Thanos is born with that deviant gene, and a lot of that plays into his whole conquest of the universe, at least in the comics. Obviously, in the MCU, they don't really play it that way, but they do acknowledge that he is from Titan, which is correct, and also his brother is Eros, another Eternal. So I think I can't remember what how that movie ends. I know some of them go into space. I think they're looking for Cersei, who was taken by Arishem, one of these Celestials. And I think the visual effect of the Celestials against Earth and how it's just this massive thing in the sky is really good as well. But I digress. So I know some of them go into space, and I think it would have continued that. I think the Eternals would have just continued the whole expanding of the cosmic side of the MCU, because really you only had I guess Thor, Love and Thunder, and the Guardians to really kind of set the cosmic side of the MCU. But having another group out there exploring a different part of the universe, I think would have been good as well. But we're not getting an Eternals 2. I think they canceled that film, which is a shame. But those plot lines are coming back into the future of the MCU. I think with Phase 4 and a little bit of Phase 5, especially specifically Ant-Man, Quantumania, how and we'll talk about Kang here in a minute, but what their original plan was for the multiverse saga, and obviously the changes, and then we'll get to Doom here pretty quickly. But it's just a shame, really, because like I do appreciate that Marvel has acknowledged their faults. They've acknowledged that, hey, yeah, we did do a lot of projects, we did do a lot of quantity over quality. We did push our visual effects artists too far, so that's a lot of shoddy visual effects work. We did do all this stuff. Like, think about this year, we only had Echo, which was filmed a long time ago, and that's very minimal visual effects because that's a very grounded story. I liked Echo. I thought it was fine. It felt very Daredevil-ish. We're also getting new Daredevil show. Punisher's coming back. All those Netflix characters are coming back, which is exciting. But like, if you look this year, we only got one movie, Deadpool and Wolverine. We got one show. Well, we're getting two shows. We got one show in January, which is Echo, and then we're about to have Agatha All Along comes out, I think, next week.
The hell's Agatha?
It's like a sequel series to WandaVision.
Yeah, I'm not too.
I can't.
My thing is, who cares? Like,
I care.
What's supposed to Well, we already established that you're biased at anything Marvel puts out. You come to like a dog in heat. That's aside the point. My thing is, okay, WandaVision. We had WandaVision, and then that's what leads into kind of Doctor Strange into Madness.
Yes.
So it seems like that arc is kind of shut. It's done. It's done with.
Wanda,
So why do we
as
need?
we
Why
know,
do we need Agatha?
probably isn't going to be in this show because it follows Agatha, right? The Agatha Harkness from the villain of WandaVision, right? And how she gets her powers back and she forms a new coven, and like I think the original plan was Jonathan Majors was going also to be in the show. They were going to make one of his variants called Immortus, who showed up in the end credit scene for Ant-Man Quantumania, where they had the Council of Kangs. He was going to be the writer of the Darkhold. He was going to be basically like this ever present like dark force, right? And that was supposed to play into the multiverse saga, like the overarching story, right?
See, but then that's where the problem is. It's like I said, from Iron Man to Infinity War, it was pretty linear, I would say. Once it followed this line, you had some of these characters, you had their movies, but it all tied into the main line of the Avengers. Once the Avengers started, and then the movies came out after that, it all had to tie into one end game, one end goal, which was Endgame.
But then that didn't really settle until I would probably say Phase 3. I mean, obviously we got the Infinity Stones throughout the first Phase 1 and Phase 2.
Yeah.
But Phase 3 is where they really like locked in, like, okay, this is what we're going to be building for. And you had that I forgot which movie where it had the end credit scene where you get like a glimpse of Thanos, but you don't actually see him it's Avengers 1.
Yeah. But I still feel like it followed a relatively straightforward path. Now it's like we're exploring too much stuff. You got the Eternals and doing the cosmic stuff. Then you got what is the other one that you talked about? Secret Wars. And it seems like we're just going all these different routes, and we're just they're just webbing out in such a way. And it's like I can't keep track of what's the new end game. Also, you're exploring some of these characters, but it's like okay, where does Agatha tie into that?
Well, we don't know yet. We don't know how.
But also, who really cares? Is it really that important to have its own fleshed out thing, or can we just have some little exposition about it and be done with it? Is it really that important?
We honestly we don't know. I mean, we don't know until the show comes out and like if it deals with a little bit of multiverse stuff, if it deals with maybe adding a new element to help explain more the multiverse or like other dimensions and stuff like that. Kind of like Doctor Strange, right? Like technically the first mention of the multiverse was Doctor Strange 1, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, and so it's like you go, and then like obviously Doctor Strange 2, they explored a little bit of that, but we really only get to see another Earth, 838, And then it's mentioned also in Far
Spider-Man.
Far From Home, where Mysterio says that he's from Earth 833, which is also kind of crazy. But he also mentions that Earth is 616 and like blah blah blah. And so it's like that stuff has been implanted. And I think with the multiverse itself, like yeah, it does get it feels like you can just cop out of anything, right? Because it's like, oh well, this character died. Well, let's just go to another Earth and pluck them from it.
But then there's no consequence.
But
everything
they
that they did is meaningless.
But that's what incursions are. And so like they mention that these incursions is like if people are not where they're supposed to be, these universes could collide. And that's something from the comics. Like incursions are something from like the comic the 2015 run of Secret Wars, the most recent run of it. And so I agree. I don't think every project alludes to or connects to the multiverse as a whole. But obviously, Phase 4 to me is mostly them just expanding the universe in terms of like, okay, so now that Endgame's over, the Avengers are disbanded. We need new heroes. So now we got Shang-Chi. Obviously he's been absent. I think he should have had a second movie already. That's just me personally. But we have Shang-Chi, new hero. We have Miss Marvel. We have Photon. And they were in the Marvels, the latest movie. And it's like, you have all these new characters. What else was in there? I have to pull up the, Falcon and the Winter Soldier. We have Sam as Captain America now. We have Bucky being a part of the Thunderbolts. We have Joaquin Torres, which is a character from Falcon and the Winter Soldier. He's the new Falcon now. And he'll be in the new Captain America movie. We got Moon Knight. Moon Knight is this first step into this paranormal world. We also got Werewolf by Night, which we've talked about briefly before. Werewolf by Night, which is a character that works with Moon Knight in the comics as well. And I think like all of these, She-Hulk, like all of these characters that like obviously like She-Hulk, Werewolf by Night, Moon Knight, Miss Marvel, like they don't really, well, Miss Marvel kind of, but like they don't really tie into the multiverse, but they're just new characters to add to the roster, right? And I think that like that's what Phase 4 was about, was really, and plus we got Wakanda Forever, with the passing of Chadwick, and Shuri taking up the mantle of Black Panther, which a lot of people are like, I don't know why she needs to do that. It's like, well, she does in the comics. Get over it. And like we have these just new characters to be introduced, and really it's only like 4 or 5 new heroes. I mean, well, Kate Bishop, I guess, also introduced in Hawkeye. And then of course there's Cassie Lang, who is now a hero. We have oh gosh, what's his name? We have Hulk's son, Scar, who will probably be part of Young Avengers. We have Wiccan and Speed, which are Wanda's kids, which will probably factor into Agatha All Along. And then we have who else is there? There's Miss Marvel. I've already mentioned. Oh, America Chavez from Doctor Strange 2. She's a member of the Young Avengers, so they're introducing all these new characters, and then Phase 5.
So they're gonna make they're gonna make this whole Young Avengers arc, and then have this whole Secret Wars arc, or what's Secret Wars?
Yeah.
What's gonna be the whole thing with that?
So Secret Wars is basically like Endgame, but like on like steroids. Kind of. So basically in Secret Wars, which is, we'll get to the Doctor Doom thing. In the latest run, there's a character called the Beyonder, and the Beyonder is present in every single universe. And so with the Beyonder's powers, when he dies, the universe dies. So then Doctor Doom takes his power and becomes God Emperor Doom, destroys the multiverse, and pieces together all of these different universes into one world called Battle World. And then like all of these characters that survive this from different realities are all on this basically planet, this one universe. And it's exactly what it sounds like. They battle each other. A lot of people die. There's a bunch of different different versions of different characters, and I think that's what they're going for, and that's why when you watch like Loki, they introduce the concept of the multiverse. They introduce how it works, the idea of variants, and the timelines, sacred timelines, and how timelines get destroyed in the void as well. So they introduce those elements, and then you have stuff like Shang-Chi. You have stuff like Ant-Man Quantumania, and then also Loki. Well, they introduced Kang, and how Kang was the original, plan for the multiverse villain, because he technically is in the comics, but he's from the future, and he's actually a descendant of Reed Richards, which is interesting. And so, with the whole thing with Jonathan Majors about him being accused of, was it domestic abuse? What was it?
Yeah, domestic abuse. It was like domestic violence.
It was something like that.
Apparently, he was beating his girlfriend or whatever. Now, I don't know if those charges were even dropped or if he was even convicted of it.
I think he was convicted last year.
Was he?
Mm-hmm. I think it was around this time, maybe October of last year, because it was right around the time when Loki season 2 was coming out, because he's in that. He's in season 2 of Loki.
Yeah.
And I think it was around that time is when they dropped him, and then they just had him finish out his arc there, which, again, is a shame, because separate from what he did, I do like Jonathan Majors as Kang. Like, I think he had, especially in Quantumania, like, even though Kang wasn't at his full power, but he's just so menacing in that, and like also his suit looks sick. Like the way that they translated his suit, I thought was really, I think personally was well done. But even though that movie is pretty, it's a shame that movie did not perform as well and was not as good as it could have been. But
so do you think they're going to recast him in Agatha?
No, I think they just dropped him completely, personally. I don't know. I mean, we've only seen so much from, like, the trailers. We just don't really know what the show...
I'd say if they recast
him...
Yeah, I'd say if they recast him and, like, reintroduce his character, like, as, I guess, a variant, then it might be worth watching.
I agree.
Otherwise, I don't see any reason
I think if they did, like... So, like, Kang the Conqueror, as, like, Kang Prime, whatever, was in Ant-Man 3. But I think if they bring back Kang, they can go two routes. They can do, this is my fan casting. They can do Denzel Washington as, like, an older, like, the true Kang the Conqueror, as, like, an old man, right? And I think he could play that part very well.
Denzel Washington is that old, is he? He's like in his 50s,
60s.
right?
He's in his 60s.
But I'm just saying, generally, as like an older Kang. If they want to keep
Denzel, though, that I don't really. He's one of so look, he's a great actor, but one of the issues I have, and I just noticed it whenever I saw the Gladiator trailer.
Mm-hmm.
He does not change his accent for anyone.
No.
This man is in Rome, and he's still speaking like he's like from I don't know wherever he's from, but whatever. But like, dude, that's not how. Yeah, it's like that's not how Romans talk. Not even remotely close to how they sound.
But the Gladiator's a fantasy film. It's not that.
I don't care, man. Like, come on. Like, I just think that's a little lazy, personally.
If they got Samuel L. Jackson to fill the role.
Yeah, but he's already Nick Fury. It wouldn't make sense.
Oh yeah,
but then again, RDJ is coming back as Doctor Doom, so I guess really
so it's one of those that's weird because my thing is I get that in the end they are just actors playing characters. However, though, like within the confines of their own movies and universe, some of these phases of the characters that the actors are playing, they are that character all the way through. Yes, I would give there's a little exception with the Spider-Man, how you got three different actors playing the character of Peter Parker from different universes. But then you have things such as like Deadpool and Wolverine, where all these Wolverines, they're all essentially look like Hugh Jackman.
Yeah.
You did have the one where
you did have
you had the Henry Cavill one. So it's one of those like yes,
But
these are actors all the way, but the faces and these characters that they're portraying, like that is who they are.
so
It
so they
seems so. It's
kind of
weird to recast Robert Downey Jr. So it's like, is that face of Robert Downey Jr. Are there universes where that could he meet himself as Doctor Doom? Could he meet himself as Tony Stark? And you got two Robert Downey Jr.'s. Like, do you see what I'm saying? Like how that it's
yeah
just a little
no
weird.
I see what you're saying, and I think the initial shock of that announcement was, is he playing a Tony Stark variant turned evil, or
Yeah,
is he playing actual Victor Von Doom? And I think they
Victor
confirmed that
Von
he's
Doom.
playing Victor
It
Von
would probably have
Doom.
to be the latter, or for it to make
Well, no,
sense.
no, they confirmed that he's playing Victor Von Doom, not a variant of Tony Stark. Because in my mind, the only way I could have justified this casting, if he was like a Tony Stark villain from like a dark timeline where, or he was Tony Stark, an evil version of Tony Stark from a dark timeline where maybe he lost Pepper, maybe he lost, the Avengers lost against the Chitauri, or like this timeline where the Avengers just didn't work out, right? And he became this kind of psychotic, like, I need to protect the world, and the only way to do that is to become the dictator of the world and like build that suit of armor around the world, but just in a more fascist dictatorship way. And the reason
I
why
think that
I
would have
went,
been better executed.
and I think the reason why I went down that lane is because when the in the announcement he said different mask, same task. And a lot of people are trying to figure out what that means, but to me I'm like, oh well, it's the same thing, right? He wants to protect the world, and the only way to do it is to control it. Like that's just my rational thing, and maybe that's just a storytelling person in me. We're all writers. We can kind of make those steps and those leaps of logic of like, yeah, that makes sense. If he's like a Tony Stark variant that, just lost so much and lost like every battle, and he just became more and more insane from it. But no, he's playing a Victor Von Doom, and I think he is playing the Victor Von Doom in the Fantastic Four film as well, like from their universe. He's that version.
So this is the question I have. Okay, so you got this new Fantastic Four. RDJ is playing the Victor Von Doom for that Fantastic Four. And we know how Marvel likes to tie in all these things. So, like, the Avengers, where Tony Stark and Captain America, RDJ, and Chris Evans, they're done. But you still have the rest of the Avengers. And they're probably going to go on to be in subsequent other Avenger movies, films with the new heroes that they're incorporating. Would you say that is true?
Yeah. I would say the
Okay.
new team would probably be Spider-Man, She-Hulk, Captain Marvel, Black Panther, Shuri,
Okay.
Shang-Chi,
So then,
probably Miss Marvel, but she'll probably be put on the
my thing,
Young Avengers team.
so my question now is with the new uh, Fantastic Four and RDJ as Victor Von Doom, is this going to be in a alternate Earth? Is this going to be in a different Earth separate from that, or like, is there a chance that that Fantastic Four could meet up with, let's say, some of those Avengers, whether it be Tom Holland Spider-Man or Anthony Mackie
Yeah.
Captain America or something like that? Because this is why I'm asking, because that's going to be weird
Right. I
because
agree.
that means that they're acknowledging that Anthony Mackie, Tom Holland, these are the same people from the Avengers that we just saw. These same people who knew Tony Stark
Mm-hmm.
with the face of RDJ, if you
And
will.
and I think
And
it would be
so
most
then they
impactful
see
with.
the RDJ, like, how you just gonna pretend that, oh, this is a completely different person? Like, it's one of those, like, I get in the real grand scheme that these are just actors playing characters, but when you're doing these multiverse things, it doesn't really work like that. I don't feel like it really works like that, and that's
Well,
gonna get really confusing.
okay, no, I agree with you 100%. I do think that, but imagine the storytelling of it, right? Imagine, Peter, for example, big, he's basically the surrogate son of Tony Stark, right? And a lot of people don't like that,
Mhm.
but I don't care what those people think.
That's how that's how
Yeah,
they made it.
and so in the context of the MCU, it makes sense, right? But obviously in the comics, it's whatever. So in my mind, I think of it this way, right? It's like you have, maybe they don't know he's Doctor Doom yet. They see Tony, and he's like, Tony, Mr. Stark, and he's so happy to see him. And then what if Doctor Doom just kills Spider-Man? That betrayal, that like of this father figure that this character has, and Doctor Doom kills him, you know, but it's like you said, it's the face of RDJ. Like, I think that would be impactful, you know, if you know, Sony and Disney nut up and decide to actually kill Spider-Man in this. I think it would be, and then that's the reason for them to bring in Miles Morales later on. But it's just like that to me, I think could be impactful, because, you know, in Infinity War we saw the contrast of where he's like, Tony, he's like, Mr. Stark, I don't want to go, and like Tony's hugging him as he's literally disappearing.
Yeah.
You know, like that's impactful. You know, and then like the whole point of Endgame where Tony Stark, he sees that picture of him and Peter, and that gives him the reason to, you know, to do this time heist and figure out time travel, you know, and it's like having,
I guess another thing that also, sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, I mean, I'm pretty much done. I mean that, but
So I have another thing that's also like another reason why it's kind of confusing with these variants, and why like the whole multiverse thing can be kind of messy. So let's look at Kang. Before everything that happened, you have Kang, and I think it was in one of the Ant-Man movies. I didn't see the one that had that Kang in it, or whatever. But apparently, there's like a Coliseum, and there's all these Kangs, or even in Loki season 2, where you see these different versions of Kangs. Yeah, it's all Jonathan Majors. So it seems through all these different universes and realities that Kang is always this person, just a variant of it, but it's still they look the same.
But I think it's because
then also you have Loki, where you have various variants of Loki, and they all look completely different. You got the woman, you've got the other old dude, you got the alligator. So it's like you have some variants where no matter what, they always look the same. They're always going to be the same person.
Even in Deadpool and Wolverine, you had Dogpool, you had Lady Deadpool, you know, you had Kid Deadpool, Baby Deadpool.
Exactly, but now his thing, like, so that's the one's like, where do we draw that line? Like, why is that we have some variants where they look all the same no matter what universe, and you have some where it's like, they can look a little different.
So my reasoning, besides the real world reasoning of these are just different franchises from different times. I think they sort of explain it. I think when Far From Home was coming out, or not Far From Home, No Way Home, when that was coming out, you know, they were like, oh, well, we have these different Peters from, you know, the multiverse. How, you know, how come they look different? And I think they explained it like, so you have the sacred timeline, right? And I think all the little strains, because in Loki you kind of go into it and you see that it's a bunch of different little timelines, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I think the closer they are, the more closely related the variants are, you know? And I think the further you go out, the more deviation you get. So, like, you have a Spider-Man that looks like Tobey Maguire, then you have a Spider-Man that looks like Andrew Garfield, but all of these universes around here look like Tom Holland. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
And, like, I know that's kind of like a cop-out answer, but, like, I feel like that sort of explains, like, oh, the further you get out in the multiverse, the further it branches, the more deviations there are. So you have different actors playing these characters, right? And like, I feel like that's the only way to really rationalize that is an in-universe explanation, not just, because in real life
but then
we casted them different. You're right. It adds another layer of complication. But it's
because then I look at the whole Kang thing. It's like, you got that whole Coliseum. You tell me there's got to be more than 1,000 freaking Kangs. You tell me they're all in the same ballpark. They're all in the same little suburban community. Not, you know, a single one is all the way light years adjacent from reality. Like, you tell me that, if that were to be the reason, you know.
Yeah.
This is still one of those confusing. I think that's what makes the multiverse just really messy and complicated. And I feel like at some point you got to just suspend reality and disbelief for a little bit, but I can't help it.
Well, so look at it this way, right? So, I mean, you probably don't really know much about the DC multiverse, but the way that they do their multiverse is that it's also Earths, but there's a finite version of them. Like, there are infinite, but like the New 52 specifically, there was only 52 Earths, and it was easy to, you know, control, maintain. And in each of those Earths, like, everyone's slightly different. You know, like on Earth 2, you have the Justice Society instead of the Justice League, and they're different characters.
Yeah.
Those characters exist on Earth 1, but this is the main team on Earth 2. And then you have
Yeah.
Earth 3, which has the Justice Syndicate, which is the evil versions of, it's like Ultraman, Superwoman, Johnny Quick, like all of these different, it's the Justice League, but they're just evil. They're crime lords, basically. And like so on and so on. So you have, I think in the way that, they have their own secret wars, which is Crisis on Infinite Earths. And the way that they did that, I can acknowledge, like say what you will about the CW superhero shows, but, for the most part, they did a pretty good job of introducing all these new characters, and they had Supergirl, who was on a separate Earth, and when they had Crisis, and they also had Black Lightning on a separate Earth as well. And when they did the Crisis right before the pandemic, I think that was 2019, so they were able to shoot them all and get them done before, productions shut down. But at the end of that, all the multiverse collapsed and a new Earth was formed. So all of these characters were now on the same Earth. And that kind of happens in the MCU as well. You had 616 in the multiverse, or in the comics, and you had 1610. And 1610 was the Ultimate Universe, which is where Miles Morales came from. And then you had like the Ultimates, which were that Earth's version of the Avengers. And so when Secret Wars happened, all these different Earths basically got thrown into Battle World, and then when Doctor Doom, God Emperor Doom, was defeated, they kind of reformed Earth in like this multiverse. So now you had Spider-Man Miles Morales with Peter Parker on 616. So like all of those characters who were unique to 1610 got brought to 616, and now they're on one Earth. So I imagine the same thing is going to happen in Doomsday / Secret Wars, because we have to get the Fantastic Four into the MCU. We have to get the X-Men into the MCU. And I know they sprinkled in the X-Men a little bit so far, and they're going to continue to do it. But getting these main characters into the main sacred timeline, I think, is what the ultimate plan is. And then it's going to kind of level out at post Secret Wars if they continue, phase, or whatever the next saga is going to be, So I mean that's just how I imagine doing it. I mean there's really no other way to really do it besides to introduce all these Earths. You have 838, you have whatever universe designation the Fantastic Four are from. You have 616 main sacred timeline. Then you have universe 10005, which is the X-Men universe. We learned that in Deadpool and Wolverine. And I think all these Earths are going to be put together in this battle world. Probably going to be the Void. I imagine it's going to probably look like the Void as this amalgamation of all these different landmarks and things from each of these universes. And then just at the end of it, they're going to come back. They're going to fix it somehow. And then they're going to be on this new Earth where the whole time the Fantastic Four has existed. The X-Men have existed alongside with the Avengers and, all the Inhumans probably, and like just all of these different factions. And it'll be a true MCU, or be a true like Marvel timeline like you have in the comics. But again, it's all about execution. It's all about, can they bring all these characters together in a way that makes sense and that's plausible, and can they, just execute that Doomsday and Secret Wars? Because Secret Wars is a huge event. I mean, it's literally universe ending. So it's all about if they can execute it or not, and then what are they going to do past that, which we don't know. We don't know what they're going to do. Right now, they're just focusing on the rest of Phase 5, which ends with Thunderbolts next year, and then Phase 6, which starts with Fantastic Four. So I don't know. And there's still projects that they have dates for Phase 6 that we don't even have. Hey, do you want to talk? I can stop talking.
No, I was going to have John. No, it's not you talking. It's just Marvel
Yeah,
Let's ask John, like, what are your thoughts on this? Because it's still so, like, it's confusing, and
I mean,
I'm just
that's the only
tired.
way. I think we just have to get through this slog, and it could be like maybe it's on purpose, like all of this stuff doesn't make sense, like on purpose, and it's all part of the grand plan, and that after Secret Wars it'll all line up and be like, oh, okay, so you can go back and watch another project from Phase 4 or 5 and be like, okay, no, I see why they thought this thread was left open. Now they brought it back here. I mean, that's just how it goes. But again, it's all about execution. It's all about, I mean, we just got a few more years. We just got a couple more years. 2027 is when Secret Wars comes out. It's 3 years from now. Well, it's less than 3 years, but it's still like, it'll be here before we know it. And then we'll be sitting in the theaters like we were sitting in the theaters for Endgame, being like, So I don't know. That's just what I think about it, and I think that's just my storytelling brain just kind of coming up with a rational explanation for what they've
Justification.
been doing. Yeah, it's like I'm justifying it from a storytelling perspective, right?
From a storytelling stand perspective.
I need to take a breath. God damn.
I think
What do you got, John?
I think like how I cope with just like the current state of Marvel is I usually just go to the movies to watch a character that I enjoy seeing
fair.
on screen. I don't really care too much about the stories. Like I'd say I care most about stories that make sense and that sort of tie together into the overall Marvel universe. I think those are the stories worth telling, as opposed to just side stories that may not necessarily go anywhere. I think those stories can be fun, but it's just not really adding to anything.
Yeah, I agree. But like, let's go back to the whole idea of like what needs to be a movie, what needs to be a show, and what needs to be like a special presentation, right? So
Or neither. They just have a
Or
part
neither.
of
Right.
yeah. Sometimes not. Like, here's the thing. I want to go with Gambit. I think, don't get me wrong, I think there's a lot of Gambit hype, because I imagine there are some
Mhm.
people who genuinely like the character Gambit. Cool. I think a lot of people really like Channing Tatum as an actor. Cool. And then a lot of people like Channing Tatum as Gambit.
Right.
I enjoyed it thoroughly, so that was great. However, now maybe he could do it because he's shown that he can be a pretty decent actor outside of being funny. But I can tell if they do a Gambit film where I think it's going to go more of I'd say a comedic route, such as
Yes, I
Deadpool is.
agree.
But regardless, is that character really popular enough to warrant its own thing? Like, are we seeing it because of we want to know, we just really want to get invested in Gambit the character, or are we seeing it because we want to watch Channing Tatum play Gambit?
Yeah, and I think that goes back to the conversation earlier about Hulk. Like, do we need a solo film of this character? And Gambit, I think, works best as an ensemble character, personally.
Yes.
I mean, I haven't read a lot of the X-Men comics, but I've seen the original X-Men show, and like obviously X-Men '97 earlier this year that came out as well. Great, continuation of that show. And he just works best as an ensemble, and I think he's great in Deadpool and Wolverine. And I'm glad that just like Mahershala, I hope he gets the chance to play Blade. But like, I'm glad that Channing Tatum, I keep saying his name wrong.
Tatum.
Channing Tatum got to play Gambit at least once, and got to fill in that role. And I don't know if you've seen any interviews with him since the movies come out, but he's just very thankful and very humble about the opportunity to play.
Absolutely.
Now, there's calls that people want a solo film for him, and I just wholeheartedly disagree. I don't think we need a solo film, like a solo Gambit film, because we haven't even got the main X-Men yet.
Yeah, because that was the point I was about to get to. So here's the thing: you got the main X-Men,
Right.
pretty much Wolverine. Okay, so here's the thing: you got Wolverine, who's always had his own standalone, or he could do his standalone stuff.
Yeah.
He's had Logan, and he's even had X-Men Origins. Okay,
And then the
you got
Wolverine.
the Wolverine.
He's in Japan,
But then
yeah.
and then you also have what is it? You had first X-Men First Class in
Hmm.
those films, which it it was mostly about, I guess that was more or less kind of Charles Xavier and Magneto's kind of origin story. But the thing
Yeah.
is, is they didn't do a Magneto standalone film and all of
Well,
that. We
that was
don't
the
need
original
that.
plan. Did you know that? So
No,
when X Men
I'm glad they
Origins
didn't.
before X Men Origins came out, they had this whole line of films lined up. That was X Men Origins. That's why it's named X Men Origins Wolverine.
Okay, yeah, that would make,
So
yeah,
they
that
were
would make
going to
sense.
do an X Men Origins Magneto, but after the failure of Wolverine, they're like, let's retool it, and so it got retooled into First Class. So a lot of like what
Exactly,
they were
and
going
that
to
was good.
do in, so a lot of what they're going to do in the Magneto film was going to be in First Class. And I actually had this fan theory after watching the film, and I posted it on Reddit, and a lot of people thought it was all right. But my fan theory was that just like Gambit, how Gambit exists in the void because his film was in development but never got off the ground. That they mentioned that there was a version of Magneto on the team as well. And I had a thought. I'm like, oh, I wonder if that's the version of Magneto we would have got in X-Men Origins Magneto. But of course, it got retooled to First Class. But like, I think we needed a First Class X-Men film first in the MCU with their version of their characters before we even get solo films of these characters. Personally, I think.
Well, I think the whole thing, like the First Class, like that, those series, those are like still the prequels to the X-Men 2000, if that makes sense. They're
Yes.
all still, I
Yeah.
would still consider them
They're
prequels to
technically
X-Men
all in the
2000.
same
So
timeline. Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, they're just younger versions of those people. So it's like it would be weird to, I don't know, it's just going to be kind of weird having these young people play modern X-Men where they're clearly not. They're supposed to be the younger versions of the X-Men that we knew
Right.
from 2000 to X-Men 3 and everything. So I think we're good at just leaving that alone,
Yeah.
unless you want
I
to,
think
like,
if they wanted to do anything with Gambit, I think they could just do a special presentation, just like they did with Werewolf by Night. I think having like just a little,
you
like 40 to an hour short film of
self-contained in its own
a
universe
self-contained in
rather
its own,
than
well, not in its own
all these
universe,
other little giants.
because Werewolf by Night is in the MCU technically. Just has no really outward connections except just to introduce more of like the paranormal,
Yeah,
side
that's what
of
I'm
it.
talking about. Like,
But
here's the thing, if they made a special and I finished that, I don't want to have the notion like, are they setting this up for something else?
yeah. I
Just
mean,
let
the
it
only
be its
thing
own
they
thing.
could set up for like Werewolf by Night specifically is that he returns for like Moon Knight season 2, or like Blade, and then you'd be like,
Mhm.
oh, that character, okay. And if you didn't see the Werewolf by Night special, it's whatever. But I think if they did that with Gambit, he still gets to play Gambit again, and like, but I don't think we need that now. I think we need to focus on
Yeah.
the projects coming out: Captain America, Brave New World, Thunderbolts, Fantastic Four, Doomsday, and Secret Wars. I think we need to focus on those films and then whatever projects they have in between before we even think about introducing these solo films of these X-Men characters, or especially a side character. I mean, I know Gambit is more of a mainstay, but he is still technically a side character. Um, and his popularity really only rose because of the original X-Men show, I think, personally, back in the 90s, and then obviously got reinvigorated with 97, and then obviously with this film, Deadpool Wolverine. So I like Gambit. I'm not a diehard Gambit stan, so I personally don't need a Gambit film, but I would be okay with a special presentation short film Gambit thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So to tie back to your original point, like I guess like what the state is for the current state of the MCU, I think right now I think there's a lack of focus. I think there's a lot of different shows and movies that Marvel's working on, and I feel like a lot of those properties aren't really where the focus should be. I think the focus should be on developing the story of the MCU as opposed to making like extra content just for people to stay on their streaming platform.
Right. Well, yeah, because that's the whole point, right? Because when you look at those 19 projects that came out in 21 and 22, half of them were Disney Plus shows. and it's like you do 6 weeks of a show, and then it's off for 2 weeks, and then the next show comes out. And so it's one of those things where, like, yeah, they were just trying to keep, the story going in a way, or like, keep the subscriptions going. But I think, like I mentioned earlier, I think Marvel they have acknowledged this. They have acknowledged that, like, okay, sorry, we did overdo it. Kevin Feige's like, you're right, we did. We've had a lot of, issues with visual effects. We had a lot of issues with quantity over quality. We had this. We're going to take a step back, focus on these main projects first. Like Agatha All Along, sure, that's probably just, that's Marvel Television, different division now. It's part of Marvel Studios, but it's a separate division now. So, they have dedicated people working on the television shows. Then you have Marvel Studios where they have dedicated people working on the films. Instead of just all of them being mashed together, they're now dividing them. Then you have Marvel Animation because, we still have What If Season 3 coming out soon. We're going to get X-Men 97 Season 2. Those I Am Groot shorts are still technically part of that. I don't know if they're doing any more of those. But that's mostly just for kids anyway because they're like 4 or 5 minute shorts. Then you have that Spider-Man animated show, freshman year, as well. And then there's the rated R, the TVMA, Marvel Zombies is also being worked on. So, Marvel now has divided the stuff now. So I think with the movie stuff going forward, like we have 5 movies that we know of that are coming out. I mentioned them. We have Captain America Brave New World is the next movie coming out in February 14th, I believe, Valentine's Day. I can't wait to go see that alone. And and then you have, after that, I believe it's Thunderbolts. Thunderbolts comes out, I believe, in May of next year. And then in July, it's Fantastic Four, I think is what they have on the docket. And then obviously Doomsday comes out in May of 26. And then Secret Wars comes out in May of 27. And then whatever, I think there's about maybe 6 projects in between there that they're adding. I know Ironheart's one of those. Ironheart's going to dive more into the mystical side of the MCU, because the villain is Red Hood the Hood. Sorry, the Hood. Red Hood is DC, and he's possessed by Mephisto. So we're gonna get Mephisto. So we're probably gonna get more mystical stuff, more paranormal stuff in that show. And then I think that's about it as far as I know. There's allegedly a new Vision show in the works. It's like
they kind of left it off on a cliffhanger
to cap off, because they talked about how Vision Quest, I think is what the working title is. It's going to cap off this trilogy from WandaVision, Agatha, and then Vision Quest. Like that's its own isolated trilogy, but still thing. So I don't know when that's supposed to come out and how that's going to tie in. Obviously, I mean, it's just I think
a lot.
I think we have to acknowledge that to kind of close out this whole argument, because we are going a little long here. This whole topic. I think we have to acknowledge that there is still a lot of good that has come out of just MCU as a whole. I think, including Phase 1, 2, and 3, and then 4 and 5, everything that's come out so far, I'd say about 80% of it is solid, right? And then you have, with the more recent projects, with Secret Invasion, just abysmal. I don't know what happened with that show. That should have been a movie. And I think, with Secret Invasion, I think it's a whole separate thing, because that, to me, I think should have been its own phase. Because Secret Invasion is it's like years long in the comics. Like, you find out, like, oh, this character has been a Skrull for years. And it's just now coming out, and it's just like, I think that would have worked better as, like, maybe those seeds were planted in multiple shows over the course of a phase, and then it ends with a Secret Invasion movie. I think that would have been the better play, but I think they did Secret Invasion too early, personally. And because it's one of those things where, like, it involves way more characters than what we currently have in the MCU. But that's a whole different conversation for a whole different day. But I think Secret Invasion, is the worst MCU project, and I do rank it lower than Thor 1 and Thor 2, because it's just, I think there's a little bit of good in that show, but overall the execution just was not it. And it's really a shame because that story deserves multiple projects to tell, not just one 6-episode show. And I think that's the general consensus, especially if you've read the comics with that in it. And same thing with Civil War. I think there was a Civil War 2 in the comics, and I think there is precedent that they could do a Civil War 2 in the MCU as well, especially if you're now introducing mutants, because that was the whole thing. Well, it was Inhumans. Mutants was involved in the first Civil War, and it was Inhumans in the second one. But, when you're introducing these more superpowered people, I think Civil War 2 could work in a future post-Secret Wars thing. But other than that, I think to close out, like, you have to acknowledge that, there's good characters that they've introduced, and a lot of it's just execution on those characters, and I don't know. I'm excited for what's coming next because it's more grounded in a way.
No, it's not.
Well, I mean, yeah, you have the President of the United States, hulking out into Red Hulk, but it's like, I'm saying, like, well, Captain America specifically, it feels more grounded, and they're acknowledging Tiamat, the celestial that's sticking out of the ocean, and that's where they're getting adamantium from, and that's
because that sounds grounded.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it's not like world ending. And like the Thunderbolts, they're dealing with Sentry, who is the Superman level character, so we're gonna get Sentry in this soon. And then Fantastic Four is going to be more cosmic, more multiverse focused. But, for the most part, and we're also getting Daredevil. Daredevil is going to be streets level again, like it was in the Netflix show. We're getting Charlie Cox back, of course. And John Berthal's coming back as Punisher, in that show as well. We're also getting Muse, who is like a serial killer, who is going to be one of the villains, and Kingpin. Kingpin, Vincent D'Onofrio is coming back as Kingpin again, just like he was in Echo, and Hawkeye, when it was the first MC project that he showed up in. And, we're getting these more grounded stories again, which I really appreciate, because I think that's Marvel at its heart, is these grounded stories. And then occasionally you have these Avenger-level threats, that require more heroes to be involved in. And one of the great comparisons between DC and Marvel that I like is that with DC, it's these gods trying to be human, right? And then Marvel, it's these humans trying to be gods. And I think that's a great kind of contrast between them. And obviously, we'll just kind of see, James Gunn is head of DC now, or he's one of the heads of DC Studios now. And how is it going to compare next year when the first big film comes out, Superman? How is that going to compare to Fantastic Four? Because they're coming out in the same month. So that'll be very interesting to kind of see, and how he takes that universe, maybe learning from what Marvel has done the last few years and what he's done with his Guardian movies. How was he going to run the DCU with Peter Safran, his co-president? So, again, there's a lot to talk about. I think that's also just a different discussion for a different day. But any closing thoughts you guys have before we end this episode? Don't all talk at once. It's okay.
I'll let you go, Jonathan.
No, like I said, I think the MCU just lacks some focus right now. I think, like you said, there's some good things coming out of it, but there's also some questionable things as well. And I think they could close that gap by giving some level of focus to the things that actually matter.
And I think they are. I think they are now. Like I mentioned, I think they're refocusing. They're retooling with the RDJ casting of Doctor Doom. They're moving towards Doctor Doom as the big bad. They're focusing on, these projects coming out before they announce 15 others. So yeah, I think the refocusing thing is a good idea, is what they have been doing for the last probably year, I would say, after they had to fire Jonathan Majors. So. But Rafael, do you have anything to close out?
I'll say a little bit, kind of add to John's statement. Yes, I would say they are doing some good. 80%, nah, I wouldn't put it that high. I would say it's probably 40 to maybe 50. I think they just need to reel it
Is
back
that
a
40
bit.
to 50? Because my 80% is
40 to
including phase is all of it, like phase 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. That's my 80%.
Yeah, I'm still gonna go probably 50%, maybe.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, you're biased against them. You're biased for them. I'm probably a little biased against them. I don't know. I think they're doing too much. I think they're reeling it back a little bit. They've been in recent times. They've been reeling it back, but I think it's one of those kind of like John said. Not everything needs to be made. Some things can also be told in exposition or in flashbacks through other shows. Do what's really important and figure that out. But like fleshing everything down to where every little tiny character down to the freaking bartender is going to get a freaking TV show, and then that's going to tie into something else. Like it's like it seems like super overly ambitious, and we've seen that some of these movies that they put out, decent amount of them, are kind of bombing because they're just rushing and just putting some stuff out. Like, well, we got the movie, it's going to tie in this way, but you forget to, make the movie kind of thing.
Do you think a lot of that is because, like, before we close out again, do you think a lot of that is because, like, look at just movies in general, not just MCU films? But like movies now are just in theaters for like 2 weeks, and then they're put on VOD or streaming.
I think it's the state of Hollywood. I think it's the state of Hollywood.
I think that is a Hollywood problem, like as a whole. Not.
I think it's both.
MCU.
I think it's Disney and Hollywood at the same time, and both of them are really lacking as far as making a good movie. They're mostly focused on the big picture, and it's always like, yeah, the movie. It's like, oh yeah, the movie could suck, but we still got our point across, and it'll tie in. And it doesn't matter if these movies suck because once you make the big movie, that's all people are going to be worried about. But it's like, no, I still want to enjoy the ride there. From Iron Man to Endgame, I more or less enjoyed the ride there. With this new project, okay, now I got to get invested in all these things. You're trying to tie too many things in to where it's like, if I don't watch these TV shows or some of these movies, I'm not going to know what's going to happen when that wasn't the case in the original with the original Avengers arc. So they just need to cool it down, and not everything has to have this direct, important continuity kernel of information or whatever. Not everything needs to be a TV show, and just do what's really important. But they're trying to branch out too much too quickly, and it's just getting like they're oversaturating it.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, like I said, 19 projects in 2 years. I mean, that's crazy. Like, I mean, that is a lot. That's a lot. I mean, even as a fan of the MCU, watching those movies, I was like, I gotta watch another show. And Star Wars is the same way. Star Wars has had a lot of shows, not as much as Marvel has. But I feel like we're gonna bring our other buddy on, Jordan, who's a huge Star Wars guy. Me and him, so I'm gonna have him on for a separate episode talking about Star Wars, especially with like the Alkalite and like that whole deal with that, and the future of Star Wars as well. But like, no, I feel like we had a very good discussion here. I mean, a lot of these points, we've discussed kind of offhandedly, as these projects come out. So it's nice to kind of put them together in one whole deal. John, so you have a YouTube channel. You do a lot of kind of techie stuff, or you're working on doing more techie stuff. The channel is Blackbird Productions. Of course, the link to that will be in the description of this video. So if you guys want to go check his channel out, do that. Rafael, you don't really have a presence on social media. So, but I hope. Yeah, but I hope you'll probably join me more on this show as well. We have another episode we're going to be filming talking about video game adaptations, which I'm excited about. So maybe you just kind of be a co-host to this eventually, because we used to have a podcast back in the day before the pandemic. We had a podcast. So it'd be nice to kind of those early days.
I don't want to listen to those.
I do.
We got to start
occasionally.
somewhere.
Sometimes I'll occasionally go back and listen to some of those episodes. But anyways, guys, thank you for joining me for this episode. I think it was a very good conversation. I feel like we all had a lot to say, except for John. He's kind of quiet through most of it. It's okay.
You also keep cutting them off.
I'm sorry. It's just like there's so many thoughts that are up here when it comes to the stuff. Because, we're, like I mentioned, we're all filmmakers. We've all worked in the independent industry, at least, not like Hollywood. But you know, like even the independent filmmakers, we know how these films are made. You know, we know what it takes to write these films and go into it. So, but yeah. Anyways, guys, thank you for joining me for this episode. It's been fun.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Again, we'll have you guys back on different episodes depending on what we're talking about. So you'll definitely see these guys again. But as always, my name is Jorvik. I'll see you in the next one.